Hey guys, what's up? David Lee here, the Identity Jedi, and welcome to the Jedi Council Room. It's a little less than what I wanted it to be in these COVID-19 times, as we're all doing our best to stay at home as we should be and staying safe. Don't forget to wash your hands. And so today, what we're going to talk about is identity and access management. And what I wanted to do with this episode is kind of just give you a primer of what identity and access management is, and start to break down some of the components within it. And over time, we're going to dig into some more of those components. So let's start with overall identity and access management. So when you hear that term, you probably think of a couple of different things. And so the way I like to explain it is just making sure that you understand from a digital identity perspective who has access to what and where and how, right? So all those things that you always want to know, where you define your identities, how those identities get access, how that access is assigned, managing and governing all of that together kind of flows under identity and access management. And to start doing that, you break it down into kind of three fundamental areas. The first is an identity provider, because you have to start somewhere. You have to define what your identities are, and you have to define the schemas and the attributes that are going to make up your digital identities, because these identities are what you're going to use to authenticate to the applications that your workforce is going to use on a day-to-day basis. Because of course you wouldn't want them to come up with their own identity for each application, because trust me, trying to manage that is a nightmare. We've been there. It was called the late 90s and early 2000s. Now, you want to have one single place where you store and define those identities. And so usually that's going to be in some kind of directory system like Active Directory or Azure AD or LDAP. Most of those attributes and identities actually start in your HR systems, such as your Workdays, your SAPs, your Oracle HRs of the world, and they move into those directory systems. And so for the reason for that is you want to have a centralized place where you can start to authenticate and then also authorize what those digital identities are able to do. So think of your identity provider as kind of the grandmother of identity and access management, right? It's the one that connects all the pieces, right? Your grandmother always had the story of the cousins and this person. She just knew everything about your family. Well, that's kind of the directory in this position. It knows all the identities within your organizations, the different organizations, how they're structured, and it connects them all together. And it's also where you're going to start your process of learning how your applications will authenticate within your environment, and also how you're authorized to those applications, because you're going to base that around the attributes that somebody has as an identity entry in your directory system. So now we move on to another pillar called access management. And I like to explain this one as access management is like the security bouncer at the nightclub, right? So when we actually could go outside and go do different things, if you went to a nightclub or a bar, you go in and there's usually a bouncer there, just like this gentleman right here. Probably not as gray haired, but still somebody there to make sure that, prevent you from getting into the club until you have the proper access. And that could either be paying a fee or having a ticket or something of that nature. So you think about that as access management. This is your bouncer. This is your security person who's at the door checking to make sure before somebody gets into your applications that they have the right tickets, that they've paid, whatever it is. Most of the time in the world of identity, it's making sure that they have the right access attributes, the right authorizations in order to access that application. And so access management, again, is your security. They're your bouncer. It's there to make sure that you protect your applications. Now, in today's modern world, you'll normally see that access management and identity provider are combined usually into one offering. So you've got your Oktas, your one logins, things of that nature. So where not only does it provide you a source of truth for your identities and the identity provider, it also extends out and allow you to do things to manage that access. And you always see access management kind of tied in with SSO or single sign-on, right? The ability to make sure to allow your users to log in once, and then they can access all the different applications without having to re-authenticate. That's made possible by combining access management and an identity provider together, and that the identity provider side knows who the identity is, provides the area to go authenticate. So you authenticate to that identity provider. And then from there, the single sign-on portion of that allows that access to then be granted out to the other applications. So when that user goes to say, hey, I want to go access application A, application A says, hey, no problem. Let me just go check with my identity provider or with my access management system, in this case, the bouncer. The bouncer says, hey, this person's good because I've authenticated them against the identity provider already. And so you can trust that this person is who they say they are. Go ahead and let them into the application, right? So you pull that all together. Access management is your bouncer, your security guard that's protecting your applications. Finally, you have governance and audit, right? This comes down to making sure all those, that kind of negotiation we just talked about, from identity provider to access management, and making sure that the person's been authenticated, they have the right authorizations, attributes that they need. Governance is the thing in the background that's managing all of that. So when you onboard a new employee, they start. How does that employee get? How does their account get provisioned into your main identity provider? And then from there, how do they get the right access, the right attributes, whether it's group memberships or role-based or any kind of attribute or policies that are applied? You want to make sure that all that's synchronized and done in a fashion that can be administered. This is where your governance systems come in. So you want to think here of your sell points, your Savients, your things of that nature that come in and allow you to handle identity governance. And more, these things allow you to come in and handle identity governance, and also make sure that you are respecting policies such as HIPAA or PCI. You want to make sure that separation of duties is taking place. This all happens within governance. And so these tools allow you to make sure that David doesn't have access to A and B, he just has access to A or B, right? And not both at the same time. Your governance system is in the background kind of orchestrating all of this and making sure that your processes are being followed when you're assigning access. And so with that, that's it. So the three main pillars there: governance, access management, identity provider, kind of give you the start and the framework for what it means to have identity access management within your organization. So stay tuned for the next episodes. We're going to dive into a lot more details about other areas of identity and access management. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're staying safe. We'll see you soon. Thanks for coming to the Jedi Council Room.